Carolyn DeVane, I'm really excited about this paper. Carolyn DeVane is a master's student at Harvard Divinity School, studying representations of animals at the intersection of religion and the social sciences. Take it away.
Good morning. Really glad to be here. In 2011, I gained employment as a night secretary at a semi-rural veterinary care emergency facility in the southeastern United States with the purpose of gaining insight into the administration of care to our companion animals. The questions that I brought with me were about personhood and value. Specifically, I wanted to take a closer look at the meaningful relationships we have with our companion species at moments of crisis and distress. What I found were that my questions, although a good starting point, were somehow inapplicable to the complexities of the situation. Personhood and value are core ideas in a humanist paradigm. Beyond humanism's assertion of the value of human agency, a turn toward other species exposes and destabilizes our species-specific assumptions in the realm of social interaction, our understanding of illness and healing, ethics, responsibility, and representation. At the emergency vet's office, people, dogs, cats, and the occasional chameleon, and many forms of wildlife were brought together for the primary purpose of preserving life, and if not preserving it, managing it, and if not managing it, ending it. In this paper, I want to share with you some of the views of technicians, veterinarians, and clients around euthanasia from my time at the emergency vet clinic. I also want to relate the scholarship of existential anthropologist Michael Jackson, not like the album Michael Jackson, but he's as well as the thoughts of scholars Jessica Pierce and Donna Haraway, to the process of looking, listening, and writing in a multi-species context. The turn in anthropology to investigating how we are not alone and what it means for how we conceptualize human life and culture works from the foundational idea that we are co-created in dynamic relationship with other species to some degree that we can study or at least reflect upon. Eduardo Cohn's formulation of an anthropology of life has been crucial in this regard. The anthropologist Anna Singh writes that human nature is an interspecies relationship. Michael Jackson's understanding of intersubjectivity encompasses the polarities of this relationship in that intersubjective interaction isn't only about empathy or love, funny haha and funny weird, but also covers the spectrum of experience, harmonious and disharmonious, peaceable and violent. We are constantly engaged in modes of interexistence informed by a struggle for the wherewithal for life. The love and violence of that struggle is evident in a veterinary technician's report of the death of her dog. We'll call the technician Cambry and the dog Bear. Bear had severe food and environmental allergies. The list of foods he was able to eat dwindled down during his short life to so few that Cambry felt Bear had a debilitating disease. After a host of failed dietary adaptations, Cambry weighed two very tangible pressures against Bear's life. Those pressures were Bear's compromised ability to thrive and her economic ability to support Bear's thriving. She decided to euthanize Bear, but did so in the following way. She bought 4 bags full of McDonald's hamburgers, food that Bear was deathly allergic to but loved, and gave Bear an injection of the famed pink juice, euthazol, while his head was buried in one of the bags of burgers. Euthanasia was common at the emergency vet. In one 10-hour shift, a technician reported there could be up to 11 cases. Witnessing this process for all species involved, this means humans too, was the most difficult aspect of my time at the clinic. Marjorie Garber, among other scholars, has argued that loving a dog makes us human. What does it mean for us to express that love through killing? Is it then love? One evening, a tall police officer, we'll call Mo, entered the front door of the clinic with his aged Cocker Spaniel, Tommy, limp in his arms. With tears streaming down his face, he looked at me in desperation and said, "I just can't take it anymore." Tommy was arthritic and could no longer walk and had been languishing for some time. Mo had been a vigilant witness to Tommy's sharpening decline and felt it was his responsibility to stand as his usher in the ultimate process of dying. He continued to hold him in his arms throughout the euthazol injection until the final moment when he necessarily had to let him go. If there is something in loving a dog that makes us human, perhaps there is something transformative in letting a dog go. Is there something gained in embracing rather than denying that one of the entailments in our animal relationships may be death? My argument is that this relationship doesn't make us human, but makes us post-human. Post-human in a way that transforms us beyond what we care to accept, beyond our striving to make our world palatable to human needs. The words, "It would be selfish of me to keep him alive," were a refrain I heard from clients coming in to euthanize their dogs. At first, this struck me as a rhetorical mask for the selfish interests of the human caregiver. For the first 2 months of my employment, with each euthanasia I wept and felt there was something deeply unfair going on in relation to the creature lying on the table. When so much of our efforts are directed toward preserving human life, it felt like speciesist hypocrisy to assert that denying more life to a dependent creature would somehow be in that creature's best interest. It seemed more that people were selfishly turning away from caring, a caring that exposed the unpleasant realities of living and aging, rather than expressing selflessness. Active euthanasia, as the analytic philosopher Philippa Foot theorizes, can only be a good death when death itself is a good to the person dying, not just the manner in which the death occurs. What we don't know when it comes to our non-human companions is how they view their lives in moments of prolonged or acute distress, and whether, if put on a balance with death, what would weigh out as the best option. The bioethicist Jessica Pierce wrote a memoir and philosophical study on euthanasia in relation to her dog Odysseus, whom she euthanized. Odie was inscrutable, she wrote, in relation to his joy, his pain, and his death. Ultimately, she sees this inscrutability as a gift, for in it is a deep challenge to our ways of knowing. The veterinarians and technicians I interviewed advocated for euthanasia not just in the worst occasions, what could be rationalized as a necessary evil, but as an act of compassion. The 5 technicians I interviewed about this said that although they deal with euthanasia better than when they started, some cases still get to them. One tech said that at work he has to keep a stone face. The technicians and veterinarians I encountered seemed to have in common a deep sense of community with other animals, in some cases a feeling of kinship that far outmeasured that which they felt with other humans. One veterinarian said he would certainly abdicate for human euthanasia. The staff at the clinic were engaged in what Pierce calls the caring-killing paradox. The veterinary ethicist Gerald Tannenbaum explains the kind of love involved in the decision to kill. It would be inaccurate to think that veterinarians euthanize desperately ill patients more frequently than do physicians, solely because animals have traditionally been accorded less value than human beings. Many veterinary clients treasure their pets deeply, but still choose quick, active euthanasia in the belief that this is the only way the interests of their animals can be respected. This is a complicated calculus. Research on humans at the end of life reveals that dying can be a time of opportunity, and that the dying process can be a time of profound personal growth. Pierce suggests that although we cannot know what goes on inside the minds and hearts of our animals, perhaps we should be open to the possibility that they too might experience something profound as they die. In terms of interspecies ethics, reformatting our values to hold a space for another, to borrow from yesterday's keynote conversation, to hold a space for the subjective possibilities of another creature, is a positive and necessary direction. When Mo came into the clinic, he may have been speaking for himself, but what if he were speaking from an in-between intersubjective space, somewhere not quite wrapped up in his own needs, and yet not entirely privileged to Tommy's needs? What if, in knowing Tommy for so many years, he was speaking from a place that was deeply informed? "I just can't take it anymore," he said. When I was a kid, our family dog, Poldark, wandered off during the final stages of liver cancer, in all likelihood to go die. He was found miles away and returned to us. Our companion species don't often have the opportunity to wander off at the end of their lives. Also, our culture is such that people more often die in hospitals than at home. Dog hospices may offer a more humane alternative in some cases, and Pierce writes that this is a growing industry for people who have the financial resources to offer this to their non-human companions. A professor friend of mine who studies grieving across religious traditions brought her dog to their vet last month, knowing that it might be the end. Upon examination, the vet found the dog to be in a much worse condition than they both expected. They decided on euthanasia. Telling me about it, she said, "I hate death. But at the time, it felt like the greatest act of love to let her die rather than bring her home." Thank you.